It looked like a joke. 21 ounces of crude cast iron, shaped like a piece of fruit, covered in 40 raised segments that served no apparent purpose. The body felt rough in your hand, almost unfinished. The fuse mechanism consisted of exactly two components, a pin and a lever. Pull one, release the other, throw. A design so primitive that German ordnance officers examining captured examples assumed it was emergency production, something the Americans manufactured when they ran out of real grenades. They were wrong. The official designation was a Make 2 fragmentation grenade. American soldiers called it the pineapple. German soldiers called it something else, usually in the half second before it detonated. By 1945, that segmented sphere had become one of the most feared weapons on the battlefield, responsible for approximately 7% of German combat deaths in close quarters engagements. More than 70 million were manufactured between 1918 and 1945. 70 million identical copies of what appeared to be a metallurgical mistake. The irony was precise and brutal. While German engineers perfected the steel handgranate, with its elegant wooden handle and smooth steel cylinder, optimized for maximum throwing distance through careful mathematics, Americans mass-produced cast-iron spheres that looked like amateur metalwork. The German grenade flew farther. The American grenade killed better, much better. Those 40 segments weren't decorative. They weren't grip texture. They were fracture lines, carefully scored into the casting during production, designed to guide the explosion's force. When 2 ounces of TNT detonated inside that crude iron shell, the body disintegrated along those grooves into dozens of jagged fragments traveling at 4,000 feet per second. Each piece carried enough kinetic energy to penetrate a human torso at 30 feet, sever an artery at 50 yards. The question wasn't why the Mk2 looked stupid. The question was why something so simple became Germany's worst nightmare. German grenade design reflected a century of Prussian military philosophy: precision, efficiency, elegance through engineering. The steel hand granite Model 24, introduced in 1915 and refined throughout two world wars, exemplified this approach. A smooth steel cylinder containing explosive attached to a hollow wooden handle. The handle served dual purposes: leverage for throwing and housing for the friction igniter. A soldier could hurl it 40 meters with proper technique. The explosion produced a focused blast wave, mathematically optimized through metallurgical testing and careful calculation of charge-to-casing ratios. German officers trained their troops on proper throwing form, stance, follow-through. It was a weapon that demanded skill to use effectively. The American Mk2 demanded you could throw. No technique required, no optimal stance. Grab the segmented sphere, pull the pin, release the spoon-shaped safety lever. Count to 4 if you remembered. Throw it in the general direction of the enemy. The design reflected American manufacturing philosophy. Build something adequate that works every single time, then build 10 million more. But adequate hid a savage intelligence. Those 40 raised segments scored into the cast iron body weren't cosmetic ridges added for grip. They were engineered fracture points, stress concentrations deliberately machined into the casting. When 2 ounces of TNT detonated inside the iron shell, the explosion sought the path of least resistance. The metal fractured along those pre-scored grooves first, shattering the body into primary fragments. Then secondary fractures split those pieces further as the blast wave propagated outward. 40 segments became hundreds of jagged shards, each one tumbling through the air at approximately 4,000 feet per second. The physics were merciless. Cast iron was brittle by design. Unlike steel, which absorbed impact and deformed, cast iron shattered cleanly. Those fragments didn't lose velocity through deformation. They maintained their edges. A single piece measuring half an inch across carried enough kinetic energy to penetrate 3 inches into soft tissue at 30 feet. At 50 yards, the fragment still retained sufficient velocity to cause serious wounds. The official effective casualty radius measured 30 feet. Reality extended that to 50 yards in confined spaces. German troops discovered this in Tunisia, then Sicily, then Italy, then France. The steel hand granite's directional blast might wound everyone in a 10-meter cone. The Mk2's fragmentation killed everyone in a 10-meter circle. A bunker aperture that deflected blast waves couldn't stop fragments ricocheting off concrete walls. A trench that provided cover from directed explosions became a killing channel when shrapnel bounced along its length. The Americans hadn't built a better grenade. They'd built a simpler one that produced more lethal fragments per ounce of explosive than anything else on the battlefield. German precision met American pragmatism. Pragmatism won. German soldiers understood the mathematics of survival. The Mk2's fuse burned for 4 to 5 seconds after the safety lever released. Intelligence officers distributed this information to front-line units. They timed captured grenades. They taught the countermeasure. Locate the incoming grenade, pick it up, throw it back before detonation. 2 seconds to spot it, 2 seconds to react. Theoretically survivable. American infantry made theory irrelevant. They didn't throw from 30 yards when they could close to 15. They didn't throw immediately after pulling the pin when they could cook the grenade. Holding it for 2 seconds while the fuse burned down before releasing. A grenade thrown from 10 yards with 2 seconds already elapsed landed with perhaps 1 second remaining. Not enough time to shout a warning. Barely enough time to recognize the metallic clunk of cast iron striking wood or stone. The sound became Germany's most hated noise. That soft, almost gentle impact, followed by silence measured in heartbeats, then the flat crack of detonation. Then the fragments arrived. Veterans described it differently than artillery. Shell fragments screamed through the air with a high-pitched whine. Grenade fragments made wet impacts, the sound of metal punching through sandbags, the ring of shrapnel striking steel helmets. The other sound, the one nobody wanted to describe in official reports. When fragments found flesh instead of equipment. The Mk2's compact spherical shape created tactical nightmares the elegant steel hand granite couldn't replicate. The German stick grenade measured 14 inches long. It didn't fit through bunker firing slits. It couldn't bounce around corners. Its wooden handle caught on door frames and trench corners. The pineapple grenade measured 4.5 inches in diameter. It rolled through gaps the stick grenade's bulk couldn't navigate. American squads learned to cook grenades and pitch them through machine gun apertures like baseballs. The sphere bounced off angled concrete walls into positions the thrower couldn't see directly. It rolled down dugout stairs. In trench warfare, soldiers kicked them along the channel floor toward enemy positions. Combat reports from captured German units revealed the pattern. American infantry advanced behind curtains of grenades, not single throws, but coordinated salvos. 3 or 4 soldiers targeting the same bunker simultaneously, ensuring at least one grenade landed inside. Machine gun positions received continuous grenade volleys until firing ceased. Defenders faced a choice: stay in the fortified position and die from fragmentation, or abandon cover and die from rifle fire. British operational research calculated that grenades produced higher casualty rates per pound of explosive than artillery in close combat situations. The Mk2 generated more lethal fragments per ounce of TNT than any other infantry weapon in the Allied arsenal. 4 seconds. Metallic clunk. Silence. Then nothing but the screaming afterward. The numbers told a story German logistics officers couldn't solve. A single American rifle company carried approximately 200 grenades into combat. Multiply that across a division, across an army, across 2 theaters of war simultaneously. By 1943, American infantry could throw grenades the way other armies fired rifles. Suppressing fire wasn't accomplished solely with machine guns. It was accomplished with continuous fragmentation that turned defensive positions into killing zones. German ordnance production couldn't match this scale. Precision manufacturing had limits. Each steel hand granite required machined components, quality control, skilled assembly. Bottlenecks formed at every stage. American foundries eliminated bottlenecks by eliminating precision. The Mk2 was sandcast in molds that ran around the clock. Blast furnaces across the United States poured molten iron into standardized forms. Quality control focused on a single question: does it explode and fragment? If yes, ship it. Minor casting flaws didn't matter. Surface irregularities didn't matter. Slight variations in segment depth didn't matter. The grenade worked whether perfectly machined or roughly finished. Production lines achieved what German engineering couldn't: reliability through simplicity. By 1945, American industry had manufactured more than 70 million Mach 2 grenades. 70 million. The number defied military logic. It represented industrial capacity transformed into tactical dominance. Each grenade cost roughly $2 to produce. For the price of a single fighter aircraft, American factories could manufacture 25,000 grenades. The strategic calculus was brutal. Flood the battlefield with adequate weapons in overwhelming quantity. The design itself required no innovation. France had developed the first segmented cast iron grenades during World War I. The United States simply copied the concept, standardized production specifications, and scaled manufacturing to match industrial capacity. While German engineers refined and perfected, American engineers replicated and multiplied. The philosophical difference proved decisive. A Wehrmacht company defending a fortified position in Normandy faced mathematical inevitability. American units threw grenades before assaulting. During assaults, after securing positions to clear blind spots, dugouts received grenades. Bunkers received grenades. Building interiors received grenades through every window. German after-action reports documented American profligacy with fragmentation weapons. They threw grenades at targets other armies would engage with rifle fire. This wasn't wasteful. This was doctrine enabled by industrial supremacy. The Americans could afford to throw 4 grenades to kill one defender because factories produced grenades faster than soldiers could throw them. Adequate weapons in unlimited supply defeated superior weapons in constrained numbers. German veterans who survived the war remembered the sound, that metallic clunk, repeated endlessly, sometimes 3 or 4 landings simultaneously. 4 seconds to understand you were about to die. 4 seconds to pray the fragments missed. Most prayers went unanswered. The pineapple grenade didn't just kill German soldiers. It killed German confidence in precision engineering. The Mk2 remained in American service until 1969, 51 years on the. It saw combat in World War II, Korea, and the early stages of Vietnam. Total production exceeded 70 million units, making it one of the most manufactured weapons in military history. A design copied from French trenches in 1918, barely modified, became the standard by which all other grenades were measured. Germany abandoned stick grenades after 1945. The Bundeswehr adopted spherical fragmentation designs. The Soviet Union, which had produced its own stick grenades during the war, shifted to segmented cast iron models remarkably similar to the MX2. British forces, French forces, nearly every major military power converged on the same conclusion. Fragmentation efficiency mattered more than throwing distance. The crude American sphere had been right all along. Modern grenades still use segmentation principles. The M67, which replaced the Mk2, features a notched coil wire inside a spherical body. Different mechanism, identical philosophy. Controlled fragmentation, producing maximum casualties per ounce of explosive. The Pineapple's intellectual descendants arm infantry forces worldwide. The human cost resists statistical summary. German memoirs from the Eastern and Western fronts describe the sound with variations of the same dread. That clunk, that pause. Some veterans wrote about it decades later with the kind of detail that suggests the memory never faded. Others refused to discuss grenades at all, changing subjects when asked, or simply walking away from conversations. 7% of German casualties attributed to fragmentation doesn't capture the psychological weight of knowing that sound meant you had 4 seconds to live. The final irony stands unchallenged. The weapon that looked most primitive required no innovation. It cost pennies to manufacture. It demanded no special training to use effectively. Any soldier could pull a pin and throw. Yet this crude sphere became more feared than engineered marvels, more effective than precision weapons developed by the world's most technically sophisticated military. 21 ounces of cast iron and TNT, 40 segments scored into a sphere, simple enough for conscript soldiers to master in minutes, deadly enough to change how infantry fought in every subsequent conflict. The Pineapple grenade proved that in total war, quantity, and reliability defeat perfection. Mass production becomes its own form of superiority. The Mk2 wasn't the best grenade ever designed. It was adequate multiplied by 70 million. On the battlefields of 3 continents, adequate proved devastating. German soldiers learned this lesson in the space between 2 sounds, the metallic clunk of cast iron landing nearby, 4 seconds of absolute terror, then silence or screaming, or nothing at all. The nightmare was never the grenade itself. It was knowing another one was already in the air.